It's a common pattern. An innovative educational initiative or organization gets off to a great start, expanding creative learning opportunities for children and educators. But as the initiative grows and goes through leadership changes, it starts to drift from its core values. I've seen over and over how difficult it is to sustain values and innovation over time. I thought it would be interesting to look at the Costa Rican Computers in Education Initiative as a case study of this challenge. When Costa Rican President Oscar Arias launched the initiative in the late 1980s, it was one of the boldest and most innovative educational initiatives in the world, not only introducing computers to schools throughout the country, but also rethinking the approaches to education and learning, engaging students in project-based, design-oriented, collaborative learning experiences. At the time, I was a graduate student here at MIT, and my advisor, Seymour Papert, was the chief advisor to the initiative, so I had the opportunity to participate actively, helping to organize workshops for the Costa Rican educators. I've gone back to Costa Rica dozens of times since then, observing the ups and the downs of the initiative over time. Now, 35 years after its launch, the initiative is facing its greatest challenge, as the current government of Costa Rica cut off funding to the Omar Dengo Foundation, which has coordinated the initiative over the years. For this episode of the podcast, I was happy to get a chance to talk to Eleonora Badilla Saxe, who has held leadership positions at both the Omar Dengo Foundation and the Ministry of Education. Eleonora discussed the early successes of the initiative, but also the challenges of sustaining the values and innovative spirit over time. As you listen to Eleonora talk about the Costa Rican initiative, I'd encourage you to think about educational initiatives and organizations that you've been involved in. Have they been able to sustain their values and innovation over time? What lessons can we learn from the story of the Costa Rican Computers in Schools initiative? Hi, Eleonora. Welcome to the Lifelong Kindergarten podcast.
Hi, Mitch. Congratulations on this podcast, and thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. Well, it's been a wonderful experience for me to be spending some time in Costa Rica, since the late 1980s, working with you and other people there to help with the introduction of computers into schools, and even more important, the introduction to new educational ideas and new educational approaches. And I'm excited for the chance for us to have a conversation, because I really think that everyone around the world could learn a lot from the experiences in Costa Rica over the last 35 years, both about the possibilities, but also the challenges of introducing new technologies and new ideas in educational systems.
I agree. It is a case study because it has been on for more than 35 years in a public educational system, a real project, in a real context. And as you say, we've had lot of opportunities, possibilities, but also challenges. And we have been learning from that experience, and we would like to share our experience. So if anybody can learn with us and help us, that would be great.
Great. Okay. Well, maybe let's start by going back to the origins of the project. I know it got started when Oscar Arias, who later won a Nobel Peace Prize, was running for president in the 1980s, and he made a campaign promise about bringing computers to schools. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about what shaped those early years of the project.
Well, it was in 1986 that he took office, and he had promised to bring one computer per school. And that was a great campaign promise because that was unheard of in developing country and a poor country like ours. But he had a committee and they took it very seriously, this campaign program. And they thought it's one computer in each school is not going to be not going to make any difference It's going to be used for administrative purposes, and teachers and children are not going to have any possibility of taking advantage of this important tool. So what they decided is to open an international bid, but they didn't want to buy computers. They wanted to buy an educational system that would be supported by computers. And I think that was very unusual also at the time. And in this international bid, I think all the computer companies went crazy. What are we going to offer? We are used to offer computers. Now these people, they want an educational system. So they went and found out what is it that was happening around the world. And of course, Apple had some good ideas, but IBM had the greatest idea. And he went and the company, IBM, went and knocked at the eh, Media Lab door at Seymour Papert's store. And they said, we have the computers, but we don't know anything about an educational system. Can you help us? And I think Papert said, am I free to propose what I think and what I have been thinking, working with Piaget and with Minsky and other people? Am I free? And they said, yes, you are free to do as you wish. So they came, IBM, with Papert. And
And of
that's
course, that's
when,
how I got involved because at the time I was at the Media Lab as a graduate student, and Seymour was my mentor. So it was exciting for us when we heard that Seymour had this opportunity to help bring some of his educational ideas and have a partner that was interested in being open to these ideas.
exactly. And that's when I got involved as well, because all this committee ended founding a non-profit organization that is called the Omar Dengo Foundation. And they opened the bid and they reviewed all the answers that they got. And then they said, we need people from Costa Rica to be a counterpart for whatever is it that the company is offering. So they built up, or they put together a group of 12 people from the Ministry of Education, from the University of Costa Rica, and from private enterprises. I came from the University of Costa Rica.
And it does seem to me that for me, one important part was that there was a clear educational vision from the beginning because there are a lot of initiatives. They're thinking just about the technology. And like back at that time, I know it often got framed, again, this is in the 1980s, as a lot of computers were going into schools. There's a lot of talk about computer assisted instruction, CAI, about, and Seymour was presenting a very different vision. So I think from the beginning, the group from the Omar Dengo Foundation was making a clear choice and saying, no, we have this different vision. It's not about the computer, delivering instruction, but a very different vision.
The group had some very good insights. They knew it was not about the machine. They didn't want to replicate traditional education, and they wanted to see what was there in the world. And when they met with Timur and his group, and they started to understand what is it that Timur was proposing. They said, "This is that what we want," and we all started learning from there because we had good insights, but not we were not as clear as we are now.
And I know one thing that again struck me. I know right as the project was getting started, some of us came and spent some time in Costa Rica. And what was striking to me was that there was several weeks of having some teachers from the schools and administrators, like the principal of the school, all came together for hands-on workshops where they became the learners for a couple of weeks To me, that seemed like a really important element.
It was very important, the workshops for the people that were involved. We, the 12 first, we were called the tutors, and we went to the Media Lab in January 1988. That's when I met you. And we were there for 2 whole weeks. And we were in workshops and we saw the technology and we had lots of sessions reflecting upon the educational approach, about constructionism, about the philosophy and the paradigm shift, because this supposed a paradigm change, and that is very difficult. It's less difficult to learn um, about a machine and about programming, although it's not easy. But making a paradigm shift is much more difficult. And it was a great impact for us 12 to be at the Media Lab at that time, and our minds and our eyes were open to all these new things, not only the technology, but the educational approach. And then we came back to Costa Rica, all 12, and you followed us, and we had the teachers for 2 weeks.
And again, and the main tool that was being used was there's the logo programming language that Seymour had helped develop. So they were learning about the logo programming language, but even more, they were learning about how they and then their students could learn to create and design and express themselves using logo to connect with all different things, throughout the school curriculum, using logo as a tool for expressing themselves.
And that was a huge challenge for these teachers. They were elementary teachers. That was not heard of at that moment. At that moment, when computers were bringing in education, it was in middle and high school. These were elementary teachers. And also, they came from rural schools and inner city schools. So they didn't have a lot of resources. And it was a huge challenge. So all of them, it was the first time they touched a computer, and learning to program the turtle and understand that it's a different educational approach. It was huge. So we put in place follow-up program. We 12 went to visit them at the schools to give them support and to face with them the challenges that were arising with the children. We were facing the same challenges. We didn't know much more than they did, but together they felt less afraid of the challenge they were facing.
Yeah, there's probably some advantage to the fact that Costa Rica is a relatively small country geographically, so the tutors from the central capital city of San Jose could travel out to all the schools across the country. Not that it was always easy, there's a lot of difficult terrain, but it was still possible to visit the schools on a regular basis and provide that support and continuing conversation.
Yes, and I think it's important that you mentioned that because most of the data that I can share or the stories that I can share, we have to put them in context. It's a very small country. At the moment, we have 5,200,000 people in total. At that time, I don't remember. Maybe it was
I think it was 3
4 million
million.
and
I
a
see.
half.
Yeah.
So it's important to have that in context. But also the idea that because it's small, it's easy to get to one place to another. That's not always the case. We don't have highways, we don't have high roads, we don't have public transportations. Some of the computers had to be delivered by boats, small boats, pangas, because you have to cross the river. You didn't have a bridge. So it was a challenge.
I know one thing that really struck me in those early days was the pride that it spread through the country. I know I was there a couple times. I think maybe it was every year there was a children's conference where children, each school would send some representative to the capital city, and you could just see the incredible pride in the children and in the teachers and their families about participating in this and what it meant for them and for the future.
I think I could speak like for 3 hours about the enthusiasm and uh, the feeling that we had with this program, because it was given to the schools, and there was the teachers and there was the children, but the principal was involved also, and the families were involved, and they had never seen a computer before. So it was a dramatic, uh, positive impact. So I could give you lots of examples. But what you're saying about the Children's Conference, we decided in 1989, 1 year after we started with the program, that we want to have a children's conference, and that they would come to San Jose, the capital, and show what they have been designing and programming with the logo. The computers did not have a hard disk, so the children were working with a floppy disk. Each one had their own floppy disk. So they were coming to the conference to San Jose with their floppy disks. And uh, people were so proud of the children coming to a conference. It's not that there were not other conferences. It was a computer in education programs. They were going to show what they have been programming, and they knew more about this programming than most adults in San Jose, even managers in big companies. If they had computers, the managers, they would use it for word processing, and their secretaries were using it. Now we had the children of far away in rural areas. They were coming. They were very proud, and they were showing us all what they have done. So we were really very proud. The whole country.
And I seem to remember a lot of the projects also showed that they were focusing on ideas and issues very relevant to their communities. Obviously, there's a lot of interest in environmental issues and ecological issues in Costa Rica. So you would see a lot of children programming animations and simulations about the environmental and ecological issues in their communities.
Yes, because we wanted to give them the freedom to design their projects according to their own interests. I remember now a project that was about birds. It was from the southern part in Costa Rica, and there are so many species of birds. And they had this beautiful project where they showed some of the species, and they were beautiful, and the programming was very good also. I would like to say something about this also, which is that at the time I was the pedagogical coordinator. So I was in charge of the conference, the children's conference, and um, when we said we wanted two children from each school, all of them were boys, no girls. Although the girls were participating. So I had to go to all the schools and find out what was happening. First, what is normal at that time, computers are for boys, not for girls. And maybe what the girls were doing is not good enough. So I had to convince him it's very good. But then you had the parents and the families of the girls very worried to allow the girls to come to San Jose by themselves, because we said it's going to be a boy and a girl, mandatory. We had to do that, and and so the girl was coming with a peer that is a boy and a teacher that might be a male teacher, probably also. So the families were not very happy to let them come. So we had to work. a solution for them. And it was not only for the girls, it was for all the kids. We offered that we will host the children in our homes, not only girls, but the family of the girls were much more at ease. So we hosted the children. So I hosted a girl from Tilarán, but President Arias hosted a boy in his house. And Clotilde Fonseca, who was the director of the Omar Gengo Foundation, hosted one of the children. So all of us hosted them, so they didn't have to pay for um, accommodation and food, and the families would be very much at ease with letting them come.
It does seem over and over there's this examples of the community coming together to support this. It was not just something of the teachers and the children, but the whole community and everyone around supporting this. And I know that clearly, there's the way that the children are getting a type of confidence, learning to express themselves creatively, learning some technical skills. I think there's some concrete indicators of how this was paying off also, in that it was, I know, sometime in the 90s, Intel decided to locate a fabrication plant in Costa Rica, which was a big economic, benefit to the country. And if I remember right, they said they were locating it there because of the education system and that the children had had this experience, and they felt that they'd be better prepared to be, working in the Intel facility.
Yes, that's right. That was President Figueres, and that was in 1998. And he brought Intel, and one of the reasons that Intel chose to come to Costa Rica, and that was a huge economic impact in Costa Rica, was because of this program. They saw that the children, some of them had very good technical abilities. As a matter of fact, a lot of them went into software designing. But not only the ones that had technical abilities, there were other abilities that they had developed. For example, teamworking, that Intel would like that a lot. In school, traditional school, you don't get prepared for teamworking. On the contrary, it's your work, and you don't need anybody to copy. And also expressing themselves, because they have been coming to the conference, they had been presenting and explaining their projects and their designs. They were very fluent in Spanish, and some of them in English. So that was a great advantage, and one of the reasons why Intel decided to choose Costa Rica over other countries that wanted also to to bring them to their countries.
Okay. I know we've been talking about some of the great benefits that came and how the children benefited and the communities and the country overall. But let's also talk about, I know there were a lot of challenges along the way, and it was difficult to make things continue to go in the directions that the foundation and others were hoping to achieve. Maybe if you could talk about what you saw as some of the challenges of integrating both the technology and, importantly, the new educational ideas into the educational system.
Well, I think when you want to scale up a project in education, it has huge challenges. It's not the same if even though this program started big, because it didn't start with a pilot experience, but it was the first 60 schools and then 120 and then some more. But when it started scaling, and then the schools were further more away, and you had more teachers to come to the workshops, and then we couldn't follow up with all the teachers, because and so you lose a little bit of, I don't like the word, but you lose a little bit of control, in the sense that you don't know what's happening. and you lose the possibility to follow up and to give support to the teachers. And the teachers need a lot of support. They are on their own, alone. And um, even
I know
though
you've
the,
also talked
sorry,
about that. I know you've also talked about the fact there's just some resistance in the system to change. So even if the teachers want to change, it's often not easy to bring about that change. So what were the ways you saw some resistance to change?
well, this is something I think we talked at the beginning, and that is easier to, not easier, less difficult to learn about the technology and programming than to change a mind shift, a paradigm shift. And we have been experiencing a traditional educational system for 100 years. Costa Rica is a country that has defined itself and its identity because of the pride in education and the importance we give to education. So
Yeah,
from
if people aren't
1886,
aware that people aren't aware, like Costa Rica had also done away with its military, which freed up more resources to put into education. I know there's a lot of pride in that, but even though there was always a lot of focus on education, making changes in education still was not easy.
yeah, it was a lot of pride in education as we know it, as it has been forever. Since 1886, when we had the reform, Mauro Fernandez reform, and then in 1948, when we abolished the army and decided the resources should go to education, we had no doubt it has to be, it had in education. It has to go to education, and we are very proud of that. But it's an idea we have of what education should look like, and we have an idea of what teachers should do. And of course, after 100 years, we needed this fresh air that came with the program, and we wanted a new approach of education. But people and teachers were not very convinced. Just they wanted the computers to do what they were used to do without the computers, and that was delivering information. And that was the computer assisted instruction that you mentioned. So they didn't like this constructionism thing where children can decide what design, what they program, where children have the power, and teachers would follow. And the system did not like it. I cannot tell you who. It was the whole system that did not like it. So the system started putting some obstacles.
Yeah, I know. I sometimes talk about how to really bring about change, you need to shift mindsets and shift structures. So, shifting mindsets is about a new way of thinking about learning, that it's not just about delivering information or delivering instruction, but supporting, exploring, experimenting, designing. And then shifting structures, I know one thing I remember, it's hard for some of the new ways that you were trying to introduce to the schools to have it fit neatly into a 1 hour class period, but it was hard to make that change. So those structures were strongly in place. I mean, what were some of the implications of having those structures in place?
Yes, I think we had the challenge of both, of changing mindsets and shifting a paradigm, and also the school was defending itself and had a structure in place. So I'll give you an example, the one that you mentioned now. Uh, we were able to open a space within the rigid curriculum of the schools, and the children would have 1 hour twice a week to go to the lab. The computers were placed in labs and work in their designs. So the structure and the mindset of the teachers didn't help. For example, if a child asked for something he didn't know or she didn't know how to do, then once I was there and I saw the teacher going to the keyboard and doing it for the child. So when that was over, I told her, um, we should. Don't you think it would be more beneficial for the child if you explain and they have the uh, opportunity to do it themselves, hands on? And she said, yes, I know, but we don't have time because we only have an hour. And it was 5 to the hour. And so we didn't have time. So, the structure wasn't there, the system defending, and the teacher was halfway on the paradigm shift. And so if she had the structure and maybe a supervisor and she wanted to do the things good, it's better she did it. That example might not sound very much, but if many teachers did it and they abandoned the paradigm shift and they abandoned the constructionism approach to fit into the structure of this system that is defending itself, then you're going to have a weakening of the program, and that was a challenge. And at the end, it was bad for the program.
Oh, I've also heard you talk about the challenge of different people having different ideas about how the program should be evaluated and assessed. And I know later on, I know you were at the Ministry of Education and were able to help, design an evaluation system that was well suited for the program, but other times it wasn't well suited for the program, which also made it difficult. So maybe you can talk about that.
Yeah, evaluation is a very difficult topic in any educational system or approach, because it seems that it goes first. The first thing teachers ask is, how do I evaluate? So the first thing is with the children. The ministry wanted not to evaluate, but to grade the children because they are used to grade Spanish and math and science and social studies with a number. In Costa Rica, we grade with a number. So they wanted a number for the computer classes. That's another thing that nobody understood. It was not computer classes. It was learning different things by using the computer. But they saw it as computer classes and they wanted to be graded. So it's at some point they forced the teachers to grade the children. So it was not fun anymore for the children. It was again another grading, another evaluation, and it was not fun for the uh, teachers anymore. There we had again the system resisting itself and imposing all this structure. But also, as we were talking the other day, we were subject, and I think every program, to international evaluation. And if we wanted more funds, because this is very expensive, if we wanted more funds, we needed to show what is it that we were doing. So I was at the Ministry of Education with Minister Eduardo Dorian, and we opened a bid, international bid, and said we need to assess the program. We didn't say we want to grade the learning of the children. We want to assess the program according to the goals of the program, and we want to know what is it that you can offer. And 99% of the offers were not suitable for what we wanted. They wanted to come, and it was this big banks that had this big name and this big pocket with all these dollars. And I had to say, no, no, I don't want this to be evaluated this way because then it's going to result, it's very bad, the assessment, because they're going to assess something that we're not doing. Finally, we got a proposal from the University of Montreal in Canada, and they were as so interested that they came to Costa Rica and talked with me and my team. And we told them, what is it that we want? And they understood and they designed an evaluation, an assessment specifically for our program with the goals we were looking at. And the results were very satisfying because there were a lot of accomplishments and a lot of challenges. And I was not afraid of being pointed at the challenges that we had and the opportunities to improve, because I think evaluation is for that. It's not for telling you you're perfect. We're not. So it was very satisfying is in that sense. But after that, um, the international evaluations came again to what it has been forever, and the children were being graded, and the joy of using the computers was gone for the children and for the children and the teachers.
Maybe I'll mention one final challenge, which brings it up to today. I know that the Omar Dengo Foundation was set up thoughtfully from the beginning to include on its board members of both political parties so they could continue to thrive even as there were changes in governments. And I know for a while that really worked well, but I do know that the current administration in Costa Rica shut off the funding to the Omar Dengo Foundation. So there's also the challenge of changes in political leadership and how that can disrupt the efforts that are being done.
That's a huge risk. At the time, and you are saying it correct, there were two parties in Costa Rica. And so it was not difficult to set a dialogue with the other party and with the other political people in Costa Rica. At the moment, we have 20, and they
20
go
political
from
parties.
parties, 20 political. We went from 2 at that time to 20. So now we have from the religious, more conservative religious parties to the most liberal parties, you name it, they have everything. So it's very difficult because they have different views of what country do they want. And so that was very difficult. So if you put together the resistance of a system that is fighting with all its structure, and the teachers adapting and accommodating to the paradigm that was set in before and not taking the risk to embrace a new paradigm. And then you have 20 political parties, and most of them don't understand education at all. And even less understand a paradigm shift. So it was impossible to negotiate with this current government. And the program had a lot of space to improve because what we had discussed. So there was not a lot to show. And this president said, no, I want the computers in education to be about the computers. So it will be classes, computer classes. I want it to be competitive. And I want the children to learn about artificial intelligence.
Another political element that I was just made aware of, I'd forgotten that the original project, when it started in the 1980s, received significant funding from USAID. And for me, when I heard that, I sort of felt it's great that USAID was supporting things like this, because I do think at least for several decades, it was having a wonderful impact in the country. With the U.S. shutting down USAID, it cuts down one of the funding sources to be able to start projects like this. Maybe to wrap up, it would be great to ask you if you could summarize in some way, as other places are starting initiatives to bring about changes in their educational systems. From your experiences over the last 35 years and more with the efforts in Costa Rica, what are some of the most important piece of advice that you would give other, organizations or communities that are looking to bring about change in educational systems?
And I hope, Mitch, that not only in other parts of the world, I hope that in Costa Rica we are going to be able to restart a program that was as important and as successful as the one that was started in 1988. And of course, if I'm willing to share my thoughts with anybody that in other countries that would like to start a program. And what I would say is you have to put all your effort, your resources, and all the support on the people, on the teachers. You cannot allow teachers to start a shift of a paradigm shift, a change of mindset, and then don't continue with them, supporting them to face the system and the structures, because they will go back, because we have 100 years of experience. So that is the most important thing, because the teachers are the ones who are going to first help and support the children learn. Also, convince the families that why is this important, and why, even that this does not look like school, it is very important for the children. And also stand up to the system, to the structure, and even if it's necessary, to the political power. I know when I say stand up to the political power, it's not that easy. No, I'm not talking about teachers, but there are some people that can do it. For the position I hold, have been able to do that, and I have stand up to the political system, and I have said what I needed to say. But I have had 35 years of studying, of understanding, and following you all on your new developments, of visiting the Media Lab. All my life dedicated to understand, to be very empowered of what I'm saying, convinced of what I'm saying, and I'd be able to stand up to the political system. We need to help all the people, the families, the teachers, the children, to stand up for what we know they are going to need now and in the future.
That's great. I think those are great words for people to hear, and I look forward to finding more ways to work with you and others in Costa Rica to help support those ideas in Costa Rica, but also to spread those ideas around the world. Thanks so much. It was great to talk with you.
Thank you, Mitch. As always, very, very nice to speak with you. Good luck with the podcast, and see you soon.
The Lifelong Kindergarten podcast is produced by Mitchel Resnick and Eric Schelling in the Lifelong Kindergarten Research Group at the MIT Media Lab. You can find other episodes, additional resources, and online conversation in our Substack at bit.ly/LLK podcast.